Hello and welcome. I am Lian Buan and this is Rappler Talk. In 2024, there are 111 journalists in Asia who are in jail. That's the highest number across the world, making Asia the top jailers of journalists in the world. In the Philippines, 26 years old Frenchie Mae Cumpio has been detained for 5 years in a slow-moving trial in Tacloban. 4 Filipino journalists have been killed in the last 3 years, and we're still number 9 on the list of most dangerous countries for journalists. That's according to the Impunity Index of the Committee to Protect Journalists. And to talk about that, we have today Beh Lih Yi, the Asia-Pacific Director of the Committee to Protect Journalists. Lee, thank you so much for giving us the time. I understand that one of your top of agenda of your visit is to visit Frenchie. How was that? How was that experience, first of all?
It was very moving. Our visit was denied officially, but after much negotiations, we were able to see her briefly from a distance and exchange some words of support. Of course, I'm here this week in the Philippines on a week-long mission together with 2 other international press freedom organizations, RSF and FPU. I represent the Committee to Protect Journalists, CPJ, here, and Frenchie Mae Cumpio is obviously top of our agenda, as you put it, because to us, Frenchie's prolonged detention is really indefensible and inhumane. Frenchie Mae Cumpio is imprisoned for her journalism, for her reporting, and she has been in prison for more than 5 years, even though she has not been convicted of any crime. So that, to me, is really indefensible and inhumane. And not just that, Frenchie's prolonged detention is also very much emblematic of the criminalization of journalism that's going on not just in the Philippines, but also around the world. This is why Frenchie's case on World Press Freedom Day this year has been listed as one of the world's 10 most urgent cases of journalists. We arrived in the Philippines and went straight to Tacloban City, trying to pay her a visit. We filed a joint request for a prison visit together with a number of embassies here in Manila, which are part of the Media Freedom Coalition's embassy network, with an aim to pay her a visit because she's been so isolated in Tacloban City Jail. Even though we have given more than 6 weeks of notice to the Philippines authorities, we did not hear back until a few days of our scheduled visit. And by that point, it was a little too late. But we decided to to go ahead anyway, as NGOs, 3 of the NGOs. We arrived there. They told us you are not allowed to visit, so our visit was denied officially. But we, expressed our wish that we really like to see her, and after much negotiations, they allow us to see Frenchie and her co-accused Maria, who also, like her, has been in prison for more than 5 years. But the condition was really, we were separated.
Did you talk to her long enough to have a proper conversation?
No,
how long was the visit?
It was not long enough to find out actually how her situation is in prison. We were separated by 3 layers of prison bars. Our conversation, our short exchange of remarks were under the full watch of prison guards, about 10 of them. We just, encouraged her to keep up her spirit in prison. We were able to send some handwritten notes to her, although a book that we tried to deliver to her by Maria Ressa was rejected on the spot.
Did you say
so
why?
Was not allowed. There was no reason given.
Are prisoners not allowed to have a book in detention?
That is something that we would like to find out as well, because we think, of course, Maria Ressa being the only journalist who has won a Nobel Peace Prize, we thought giving her a copy of Maria's book will really encourage Frenchie, who remains behind bars, even though she has not been convicted of any crime, but that was rejected on the spot. But what we really like to highlight also is that through our missions, meeting with the family lawyers, and also Frenchie's friend, we found out a little bit more about her conditions in prison. That we are very concerned about her health conditions. She has developed asthma, for instance, in prisons. After 5 years, there have been delays in medical care for her. We also understand some of the legal documents that her lawyers are trying to pass to her are said to be inspected, which, of course, bring up the questions about the violations of client-lawyer privilege. So those are the things that we are very concerned, and we are hoping that there will be a clarifications and response from the Philippine government about why this is the case.
Yeah. No, I gotta say, because I have a lot of experience writing about persons deprived of liberty, PDLs as we call them here, and it's not that strict. Like, I have done stories on PDLs, and they were not, they were not deprived of books. Visitors are not denied. Like, even if you walk in, they get this. It sort of makes me think that there's a special negative treatment for Frenchie. Is that also what you felt? Because it's not the first time you've tried. As I understand, you've made previous attempts, or the CPJ has made previous attempts to visit Frenchie.
Yeah, we have made, CPJ has made a repeated attempt over the last 2 years. In 2023, 2 years ago, I was here on the CPJ missions. And again, one of the very top agenda was to visit Frenchie in prison. Then was denied, and over the last 2 years, I try again, and there has always been delays, or we are given the runarounds. We, of course, wanted to stress that, especially in the case that she has not been convicted of any crime, so she should not be deprived of her visitation right. In that regards, we also, really share the concern expressed by UN Special Rapporteur Irene Khan's on her dismay about Frenchie's prolonged detention. And also, to think about this, she was arrested when she was 21.
Yeah.
She's now 26. Yeah. This is a prime age for anyone to be enjoying their life,
or doing important journalistic work.
Doing important journalistic work, as she has been doing before she was put away in lockup in prison. And again, this is a young woman who languished behind bars. The pace of justice is moving slowly. The prosecution took more than 4 years, to build a case before she eventually given the chance to defend herself in court. So, again, this is one of the world top 10 most urgent cases, and is one for us as CPJ that we continue on every forum, every chance that we call for her immediate and unconditional release.
Do you find that there's quite a challenging part in communicating her story? Because Frenchie, as we know, is a community journalist, and she was one of the many human rights defenders who were painted as an enemy of state by the previous administration. She's a victim of red tagging. Her charges are related to an accusation that she was allegedly an armed communist. How do you think you can communicate it in another way that doesn't maybe turn off the Filipino base, who has bought into the idea that all these critics or these critical voices are enemies of state?
So it's very clear to me that Frenchie is in prisons, or in this prolonged detention, because when we sit in prison, maybe because people think she has been convicted, but she has not been. But also, it's very clear to me that she is right now where she is because of her journalism. If you look back, the kind of reporting that she did, she was a campus journalist, and then she was there after Typhoon Haiyan, or Typhoon Yolanda, as you call it in the Philippines, that, she was reporting about the community, her local community, what's going on to them, the reconstruction effort. She was reporting about the military abuses. And I think as a community now, people in Tacloban are deprived of that kind of information.
Yeah.
You know, if she's out today, she will be doing that kind of very important journalistic work, reporting maybe on the increase in rice prices. And that is something that we all want to see. And as a community, I think that is exactly the kind of information where, it really shows the spirit of journalism where you hold power to account. And the second layer to that question is, of course, she was red tagged. She received a lot of threats before she was arrested. Throughout her case and her court testimony, it's been clear that there were many inconsistencies in her case, in the way how her house was raided, how the circumstances that led up to her arrest. And of course, we are very concerned that they are allegations that the weapon have been planted. And again, that is a pattern that is consistent to what we see in other victims of red tagging, that similar kind of circumstances and allegations about fabricated charges have been pressed against red tagging victims. So I think we need to be very clear, looking into her case, about why she's there today, and she's in prison because of her journalism.
When President Ferdinand Marcos took on the presidency, there was a little bit of like a breathing room for basically everyone to try and see how this president could be different from the last president under which term Frenchie was arrested in a massive crackdown. UN Special Rapporteur Irene Khan has just presented her report last night, and she said there's not much meaningful difference that has been made over the last 3 years in this new administration. In terms of Frenchie's detention and the way that the trial has been slow going, do you share that view that there's no meaningful change yet?
Exactly. We share the view of Special Rapporteur Irene Khan's very much, and we welcome, her findings, her recommendation, because that is also very consistent with our view in CPJ about the situations of press freedom on the ground in the Philippines. About a year after President Marcos Jr. Took office, I was here in the Philippines on a mission to assess the situation of press freedoms in the Philippines, to see whether things have improved, how things have changed, and the collective feedback that I got at the time was that people have breathed the collective sigh of relief. People are now feeling that they are finally able to get back to what they meant to be doing, which is reporting and journalism, rather than constantly fending off attacks. But it's very clear to us that, this change in tone is not enough. Any kind of change in tone needs to be accompanied by substantive actions and reforms. And this is where we continue to call on President Marcos Jr.'s administrations to put in, to really use this, his term in office to deliver on concrete promises.
Frenchie, as you said, is considered like one of the most urgent cases, as you said. There are 111 journalists in detention in Asia. What do you think draws the CPJ, for example, to Frenchie? What's so urgent about this case? What's unique? Why is Frenchie important to CPJ?
Again, Frenchie's case is really emblematic of the kind of criminalizations of journalism that we are seeing across the region in Asia, which is the worst region for journalists in terms of criminalizations, but also across the world. I think again and again, journalism comes under attack when journalists report something that the government doesn't want you to know. In Frenchie's case, is again her reporting about the abuses of the military, the police, the alleged abuses that led to her detention. Again, she lose her freedom for the past 5 years when she has not been convicted of any crime. That we seeing also very similar in other places in the region, in say in India, where you have in the past few years also a number of journalists who were in prison because of their reporting. In Hong Kong, for instance, journalists who have been reporting also has had to give up their freedom because of that kind of reporting that they are doing.
Zooming out from the Philippines just a little bit, of course, we know the grave situation in countries like China, Myanmar, India, as you said, Bangladesh also. Have you spotted any new emerging trend in any countries where we don't expect this to be happening, but it's happening?
I think it's quite, it's quite a mixed picture. I think I would say what we are seeing across the regions, and just to zoom out from the Philippines as well, is that the kind of press freedom violations is happening in countries that are both authoritarian regimes, what we consider as, but also in democracy. In that
like the Philippines,
like India, so it's very consistent. That is what we are seeing. It has never been more dangerous to be a journalist than today. We are seeing governments are increasingly creative, quote unquote, using various different charges to go after journalists. So they don't charge you, they don't target you under calling out your reporting, but they use different ways to go after you. Say in the case of Rappler, you have tax evasion law, but increasingly we are seeing the same kind of tools are being weaponized in other places. In Hong Kong, for instance, recently we have a numbers of outlets are also being investigated for tax-related charges. There's a case of Jimmy Lai in Hong Kong as well, who has been found guilty of a lease violations. So they increasingly using that kind of commercial kind of charges to go after journalists. So that is, in what they're trying to do, of course, is all these charges are designed to silence the press. Are also designed to put doubts in the mind of the readers and the citizen, because they cannot challenge your reporting. So now they are using different ways and different tools of repression to go after journalists. And in India, they have been outlets that are being targeted because of their non-profit status, and bringing into the questions of whether journalism is a public good. And of course, we say journalism is a public good. And what's more concerning as well is also the way that how they are not only going just after journalists, but their family. So again, bringing back the case of the Hong Kong outlets that have been targeted with tax-related charges, they are also going after the parents of the journalists, investigating them for tax, and alleging that they have not fully declared their tax. So this is the kind of challenges that we are dealing with today in terms of the picture in the region.
What's the top tool of Lawfare? As you said, we've seen tax laws, financial laws. Also, we've seen national security laws used against journalists. What do you think is now, in 2024 at least, the most common Lawfare tool?
So those are some of the examples that you cited. National security law, or security law, is increasingly common, being used, weaponized by governments. Laws like foreign agents law as well, although not so much in Asia, but it has certainly been used against journalists in other parts of the world. The security law is especially concerning because this is a trend that we are seeing across the region in India, where a number of Kashmiri journalists have been targeted under, say, the Jammu and Kashmir Public Safety Act, or a law called the UAPA, which allows for detention without trial for 2 years. We are seeing that pattern also in China, which is the world worst jailer of journalists, with at least 50 journalists imprisoned in 2024 last year. There are a number of journalists who are imprisoned on cases of espionage, for instance, in China. One of the key case also for us is the case of, say, Dong Yuyu, who is a Chinese journalist who's been working for many years. His work is well regarded at home in China and also abroad. But he's now in prison, serving a 7-year sentence on espionage charges, only because he met with Japanese diplomat to, as part of his journalistic work. And for that kind of interactions with Japanese diplomat, he's being labeled a spy.
As you described earlier, there's a law where you can be detained without trial for 2 years. That's very reminiscent of our own anti-terror law. So it feels like these regimes are sharing notes. They share a playbook. What do you think the journalists should share with each other in the region to, as a region, fight, try to stand up to these kinds of charges?
I think our best weapon, so to speak, and I say we because I'm a former journalist myself, and I definitely what gives me hope and courage as we are looking at this staggering number of 111 journalists in prison in Asia is that our journalism, I see I'm on the ground constantly talking to different people, different journalists, and the kind of amazing journalism coming out still from this region, whether it's Rappler or in Malaysia, it's Malaysia Kini or Tempo in Indonesia. It's a kind of journalism that really hold power to account, that give me a lot of hope. And I think that is our best way to fight back. That is the best weapon we have to fight back this kind of repressions. I think, if you look last year, there are certainly some bright spots. We see, the fall of a very autocratic government in Bangladesh, for instance, where you now had an interim government in place. That didn't come very easily because that came, after months of, a sustained period of protests, but also the local journalists who are constantly doing the work, keeping up the reporting, despite the fact that the protests were being crushed, but also despite the fact that they were subjected to so much intimidations in doing their work, they kept up the reporting. And similarly in Sri Lanka, where now you have a more sort of progressive government in office, that gives me a lot of hope because in South Korea, where how people, fight back against an attempted coup very quickly, that did not come true. Again, the media play a very, very important role. So when I look at these places, it's a kind of role of the media play in these places that gives me a lot of hope.
Well, we can produce quality work every day, right? But if we are drowned by misinformation, for example, like there's sometimes a difficulty in making those quality journalism stand out. As Special Rapporteur Khan said last night, she said like the media is too weak to fight fake news. And I say that, that weakness is not for lack of trying. We're like really trying really, really hard. How do you think we can move forward from this? As you said, we are being detained, some people are being killed, we are being targeted, and then we are a victim of disinformation. So what do you protect first moving forward?
I think we do it at the same time, I would say. I think, without press freedom, there's no journalism.
Yeah.
So I think journalism and press freedom comes hand to hand. And we have to find different ways to keep those two things going at the same time. Of course, I think I agree with you that, the media landscape or ecosystem is facing a lot of challenges right now because of the way how journalism works is already changing drastically over the last 10 years or so. There are a lot of issues about falling subscriptions, numbers of readers, the way that how journalists have to compete with influencers and TikTokers nowadays. But at the same time, I think the kind of quality journalism, investigative journalism, which the Philippines is very well known for, again, shows to readers the value of journalism. So, it's really up to us to, again and again, talk about this work, share those work. If I look across the region, I oversee the Asia-Pacific region. So I want to say, again and again, what I see a common theme of journalists coming under attack is because of their journalism is the kind of issues that they are reporting, is the kind of issue that people care about, is environmental journalism in Cambodia, for instance, deforestation, illegal logging, and how that impact community. In China is, reporting about what is going on in their country, which in itself is very difficult. And again, in the Philippines, you have journalists, community journalists who are very close to the community that they are reporting on, are again being targeted. So not just only Frenchie Mae Cumpio, who is community journalist. There's a second journalist, Dio Montecaros, who has also faced very similar kind of charges or case against him, which is financing terror financing. So again, when we look at the pattern and who the government is going after, it's obviously governments are going after journalists who are reporting on issues that community cared about. So I think the best way to do that is, talk and share about the work of the journalists. And again, of course, I always say to friends, please buy the newspaper. Please subscribe to the news outlet. And that's the best way that we can support them.
As you described earlier, like these repressions of journalists don't only happen under authoritarian regimes, it happens in democracies such as the Philippines, and that's essentially the story of Hong Kong, right? I remember interviewing Sebastian Lai, the son of Jimmy Lai, and he was telling me that he watched his country go from being a beacon of freedom to a place where essentially everyone's speaking out. And not to make an example out of Hong Kong, but what do we look out for as Filipinos so that we don't basically descend into a place where nobody will speak out and everybody is speaking out? Are there are warning signs that we should be looking out for?
I think, of course, I used to work as a correspondent myself in Hong Kong, and how that changed overnight from being a beacon of press freedom to a place where there's widespread climate of fear and self-censorship. That, of course, is deeply upsetting, and it's really appalling how that has changed. But of course, I think the kind of journalism, again, I think what I'm inspired on a daily basis and encourage is the kind of journalism that I see journalists in this region continue to do. In Rappler, of course, you went through such a period where you were just constantly feel like you're constantly coming under attack, but you kept on, you push on, and you persevere in the kind of reporting that you do. And in Hong Kong, of course, I still see many journalists continue to do the work, whether they are in Hong Kong or they are right now overseas. They continue to make sure that the voice of Hong Kong is not lost in that space. So I think that is really important, and that meant something. In the case of Jimmy Lai, of course, we are very concerned. He's 78 now. This year, he has spent many years in prison right now, and is approaching summer in Hong Kong, which is very hot. He's dealing with a very inhumane situations in prison as well. And we need to do something collectively to make sure that it's we have to do something before it's too late. Basically, we have real concern for his health and conditions in prison. But to come back to the questions about what we can do, I think that's the thing that we have to persevere is to keep up the reporting, keep holding the line, as you say, here in Rappler. But that's the spirit, and I'm very encouraged by the kind of journalism that I'm seeing by journalists who remain in the country, who stay here to report despite the kind of harassment, attack, and intimidation they are facing, but also by journalists who are in exile, who are finding different ways to continue the reporting.
Yeah. It's a dim outlook. As you said, there's not been a more dangerous time to be a journalist than now. But just to leave our audience with somewhat a positive note, what has been like the opportunities or the momentum, at least that you have seen that we can ride? Are there like policy changes that encourage the CPJ? Has there been any momentum to that kind at all?
Well, I'm optimistic. Let's say I think I'm optimistic because. You know, I think if we look around the region, and especially since I'm here in the Philippines this week, meeting with different journalists and news organizations, meeting with family of journalists who have been killed, for instance, because of their work. I met with the wife of Jerry Ortega, who was murdered 14 years ago, and until today, you know, still fighting for full justice because of the pace of justice is so slow. They are fighting, you know. And to me, the Philippines is a beacon of press freedom in this region. There is a very strong tradition of press freedom in the Philippines. It's a bright spot, relatively. But, you know, what we say to President Marcos Jr. is that he has the opportunity to right past wrong, to end the injustice for all these people that have been killed or imprisoned because of their work. He has the opportunity. And he really should seize on it because all eyes is on the Philippines, especially as the Philippines going to assume the ASEAN chairmanship next year. He has the opportunity and he should deliver those concrete promises. We very much, you know, as CPJ, we very much like to, you know, we look forward to work with the government to offer our expertise and to collaborate in the sense that, you know, in the interest of the press freedom, the government should really see that, you know, there's a value of openness, not just in the Philippines, but among many countries in Asia because of our history of trading nations. We have some of the world's oldest civilizations in these regions, like China or India. Many of the countries are trading nations in the past and continue to be very robust trading nation. It's an important part of the global supply chain as well. And for that, you know, our region knows the power of the free flow of information because that's what keeps market going, what keeps trade going. And they really should seize on this opportunity to find a way to come together collectively to protect press freedom and ensure that their citizens have a right to information because it's really upon us to do that. And for that, I say, you know, let's go back to this deep-rooted tradition, which is all part of our values. It's not a Western value of press freedom. When you talk about press freedom, it's not a Western value. It's part of the Asian's value, Asian traditions to be opened. So let's go back to that. And it's in our joint interest to protect press freedom, to protect journalists, because they are the people who bring us the information that, in turn, keep our society stable and safe. So let's go back, and it's, you know, my message to the government is that it's in our joint interest to protect press freedom because that is in our collective interest for stability and prosperity and peace.
All right, that's all the time we have to righting past wrongs, as you say. That was Beh Lih Yi, the Asia Pacific Director of the Committee to Protect Journalists. Thank you for watching.